Oh, we were driving past the time. And here it was trying to park a big old trail. And then I was sitting there, it's like, it's everything. But I was there, it's swimming.
Oh. Could you feel like the stand there between?
Like. Like it over, oh, you can bus trains?
Those buildings? Nice thing, so you got yours too.
Yeah.
That's your, okay. Cool then. I'm gonna go hide in the other room, so I don't spray them to them. So I'll be back here. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed on Thursday, so, but, anyways, so. I know you're gonna go nutrition of the plants today, so I'm gonna turn it over to her and go hide in my office and try not to breathe anymore. So, all right.
Alrighty, good morning, everybody. Please do not forget to shine the sign-up sheet because that goes towards your attendance. So please, if you could pass around to whoever has just arrived, so that'll be great. All right, so we have talked about plants, the history, trends, issues in plants, and then we talked about ecosystem in our second class, right? So today we are going to talk about why we grow plants for us, right? So growing plants for human use is today's topic. Now, you all remember this slide, right? We used it in the first lecture. So basically, this is depicting how we use the plants. So first, for the food, fiber, decoration, recreation, we use it for oxygen, for so many different things. So first, today, we are going to concentrate on the uses of plants as foods for humans. So we discussed about this a lot in our previous classes. Can somebody tell me what is the main source for food for us? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. So what does it come from? Like the source? Grains. All right. So basically everything mostly comes from plants, right? They are the main source of our food. Come on in. Sorry? Yeah. So yeah, plants, right? So what is the major process that plants use to make food? Come on, we've talked about this so many times, right? And the hint is here. Photosynthesis, yes. So can somebody tell me what are the three major components that plants use to synthesize food through photosynthesis? Sunlight, water, and air. Yeah, carbon dioxide. So you can see, right? So carbon dioxide, water, and the sunlight are the three major components that the plants use to synthesize, right? So in the earth, plants are the only elements that can synthesize food using the solar energy. So they are called autotrophs. They are the self-feeders. Whereas other life forms are called heterotrophs, which simply means that they feed on plants to survive, or other heterotrophs, because like us, we just don't live on plants, right? We do tend to eat meat as well. So we would categorize under the heterotrophs. Now let's talk a little bit about the human nutrition, because that's where we are heading today. So in the balanced diet, we need different elements, right? And they are carbohydrates, proteins, we need some fats, and we need fruits and vegetables for vitamins and minerals. Okay. And do not forget to sign up in the sign up sheet. Now let's dive into carbohydrates first, because that takes a big portion of our balanced diet, right? So what are carbohydrates? So these are simply the organic molecules made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. This can be simple sugars, as you can see. All right, you can see the cursor, right? So these can be simple sugars in terms of glucose, fructose, or if there's a long chain of these sugars, they can also, they'll be the complex carbohydrates such as starch that we get in rice, potatoes, and all. So what is carbohydrate mainly used for? Why do we eat carbohydrates? Right. So that's the major source of energy for humans. And the sources of carbohydrates, as you can see, we get carbohydrates from different sources. Grains is one, rice, right? Rice, wheat, pasta. There are fruits and there are some fruits which also provide us some carbohydrates, like bananas, apples, berries. We also have dairy products and legumes that provide part of the carbohydrates. Now let's talk about the fatty acids. So in the carbohydrates, you see that we had carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen bond, right? Now, in terms of the fatty acids, this is again the carbon chains with hydrogen. And you see there's no oxygen here, it's just carbon and hydrogen, except for one at the end. You'll see COOH. So that is the carboxyl group that's attached to one end, which makes it a fatty acid. Now, in terms of the fatty acid, what does fatty acid provide us with? What does fats provide us? Energy. Yeah, so that is also the source of energy, like carbohydrates. So now, in terms of the fatty acids, we have two types, saturated fatty acid and the unsaturated fatty acid. Now, if you look into the picture, we have saturated fatty acid and the unsaturated fatty acid, right? What do you see the difference in between these two? What's the major difference? Correct? So the carbon hydrogen is similar. We have the carboxyl group at the end, but the only difference is in the saturated fatty acid, you'll see a single bond between the carbon atoms, but in the unsaturated fatty acid, there will be at least one double bond that you see over here in the middle. So you can see that in the saturated fatty acid, the hydrogen bonds are tightly associated with the carbon chains, right? Which is why these would be in the solid state at the room temperature. Whereas in terms of the unsaturated fatty acid, you see that these two carbon, they don't have the hydrogen bonds on the other end, right? So they don't have to be, because carbon can only attach to 4. So basically, because of these, the examples of some of the unsaturated fatty acids would be the plant oils. And you see those plant oils, the ones that we use in cooking, those would be in the liquid state at the room temperature. So we said fatty acids are the source of energy. Some of the sources for fatty acids through foods would be fish, seafood. We also get a lot of fatty acids through nuts, seeds, as well as plant oils. Now let's talk about protein. Everybody likes to have protein, right? So proteins are simply a very long chain of amino acids. Now, what are amino acids? Basically, again, you see carbon, hydrogen. So in the amino acids, you'll see amino group, which is NH2 on one end, and the carboxylic acid group, COOH. It's the same that we saw in the fatty acid groups. And on the bottom here, you'll see a side chain. So basically, these side chains are variable, and depending on what is added in that side chain determines what kind of amino acid is that. So we have various different kinds of essential amino acids. So basically, the side chain is the one that determines what amino acid is coming out of this. So why do we need protein for? Yes, muscles, right? All right. Besides that, it is also a source of energy for humans. And can anybody tell me what would be the sources of proteins from plants? Let's start with the plants. Legumes, yes, yes. And did you know about quinoa? I don't know if I am pronouncing it correct. Yeah, quinoa. This is considered the miracle crop because this one can provide all the essential amino acids that other plant-based diets may not provide. And we'll come to this later as well. Now, besides the plant-based, we all are familiar with the animal-based sources for protein, right? So lean meat, beef, pork, chicken, eggs are a good source of protein as well, and salmon. Now, vitamins. We all need vitamins. So vitamins are groups of related molecules called vitamers. And you can see this is the structure of vitamin A. Again, carbon, hydrogen bonds, you'll see over there. So we need vitamins for various different biochemical functions in our body. And we all know there are different kinds of vitamins, right? Each vitamin have their own functions. Vitamin A helps to regulate cell and tissue growth. Vitamin B is good for your nervous system, immune system, as well as the red blood cell formation. Vitamin C, anybody can tell me what's the source, like good source of vitamin C? Yes, citrus, oranges, they are good source of vitamin C, and they act as antioxidants, help to absorb iron in the body, and maintain healthy tissues. Vitamin D, what's the main source of vitamin D? Sun. How many of you like to go outside, enjoy the sun? Cool, I see quite a few, and I love doing that. That's why I chose this field where I could directly work outside in the field too. So do you know that recently a lot of people, they have been diagnosed with lack of vitamin D in the body? Now, in today's world, we are somehow like working inside the building, right? Not all of us are working outside in the field. We're not outside exposed to the sunlight, and we are deprived of that sunlight that helps to synthesize vitamin D in the body. So that is now one of the components that doctors are looking for, because that is associated with a lot of health issues. So whenever you get the chance, try to be out in the sun, get the vitamin D. Now, vitamin E, it acts as antioxidants. Vitamin K helps in terms of the blood clot. Now, what are the good sources of vitamins in our diet? What's the food source for vitamins? Different kinds of vitamins. Fruits and vegetables. Can somebody tell me what would be a good source for vitamin A? Yes, carrots. Yes, that is correct. Now let's talk a little bit about the human energy requirements. Can somebody tell me what is the average daily requirement for a human, for an adult? Correct? 2,000 to 3,000 kilocalorie per day. Now, did you know that that is equivalent to eating 24 to 36 slices of bread? So you can just depend on 24 to 36 slices of bread, and that's, you have met your requirements for the day. Or if you come to the fat side, that is more condensed. So you'd only need 9 to 14 ounces of vegetable oil to meet your daily requirement. But do we do that for the energy? Yes. So good question. So this average requirement is for an adult. So this will vary based on ages, the sex and stuff. So which is why we have the range 2,000 to 3,000. Basically, that's the energy that is required for you to maintain your healthy body weight and do the functions accordingly. So that is that energy requirement for. Now, we already talked that carbohydrates, fats, lipids are the major sources of energy, right? Yeah. So basically, this would be an average. Yes. So this is steak. But are we all following this chart on a daily basis? No, right? There are some countries who do not even meet that requirement, whereas there are some who overdo this. But this is the average energy requirement to maintain a healthy living. Yeah. Now, as I said, carbohydrates, fats, and lipids are these major energy sources for our living, right? Now, let's talk about plant fats and the animal fats. Which one do you think is on a healthier side? Plant fats? Any reason why? I see that you see my notes over there. So yes, so from the plants, we do get polyunsaturated fatty acids, which are essential for our living. Whereas in terms of the animal fats, we do get saturated fatty acids. And in the fatty acid section, we discussed the difference between the saturated and the unsaturated fatty acids, right? So the saturated fatty acids that we get from the animal fat is what leads to the cholesterol problems. This is something that you don't want to have. So it is very important that we intake fat, but we'll have to look for the portion that we are eating. And also the plant-based fats will be more on the healthier side than the animal-based fats for these reasons. Now, tell me, what's the protein requirement per day for an adult? 10 grams? Any other guesses? 32? Getting there? Come on, more guesses. It's easy to guess. 40, 50, again, go higher. Very close. 70. So 70 grams protein per day is the daily requirement for us. And I'm discovering this as I'm like preparing for the class too. I had no clue. I just eat randomly, but that's not what we want to follow. So now for the protein requirements, we have plant-based protein. We also have the animal-based proteins, right? So in the plant-based proteins, we talked about different legumes that provide us with the protein. And in the animal side, we have meat, eggs, and whatnot, right? So it's good that we have the plant-based protein, but the fact that these only provide a very low proportion of amino acids that are essential to our body. They may not even provide us with those essential amino acids. Now, what does this lead to? So in order to, how do I say this? So in order to reach that requirement of 70 grams of protein per day, this simply leads to overeating to meet that requirement. But, and I mentioned this earlier too, quinoa, so it is also called the miracle grain. This is the one that provides all the essential amino acids. So how many of you have had quinoa? Do you like it? Good. Okay, yeah. Because this is something that I recently introduced in my diet. And I'm still trying to figure out how to cook it and eat it because it has such good health benefits, right? So why not? So if you have not known about quinoa, please do. These are readily available in your grocery markets and are a very good source of essential amino acids. Now, in terms of the animal-based diet, we do get protein from the meat and eggs. Actually, they are termed to have protein score of 100, the whole eggs. Now, there are talks about eating the yolk only or just the white part and stuff, but eggs in general, they meet the protein requirements in your diet. Now let's talk about the vitamin requirements. So we do need small amount of vitamins for our body. Now, most of these vitamins, as we talked earlier, comes from fruits and vegetables, right? So the plant-based sources. And we also talked about this vitamin D that is synthesized when exposed to sunlight. But then again, you also have to be careful. You don't want to go over there and then just get hit by the UV rays, right? So there are certain periods of time in a day when you will get good sunlight for your vitamin D. Now there is other vitamin, that is vitamin B12, that is synthesized by bacteria. Vitamin B12. So how many of you over here, if you don't mind sharing, how many of you are vegetarians? Vegetarians, vegans? No? All right. So if you are a vegetarian, this is the vitamin B12 that you will not get from any plant sources. So these are synthesized by bacteria and they are available in the guts of ruminants, like goats, right? So this vitamin B12, it is available in milk and the meats of the ruminants. Now, I had a couple of friends who are vegetarian and they have deficiency of vitamin B12. But the solution to this is now there are several vitamin B12 shots that you can get and then overcome that deficiency. But this is the vitamin that is synthesized by the bacteria. It is outside of the plants. Yes. Yes. So about the sea moss, so I myself, I am not I haven't tried that much in terms of the sea moss, but if it has good vitamins available, I'm open to trying it. Yeah. Now let's talk about some of the mineral requirements. So in terms of the minerals, we have different calcium, phosphorus. We also have iron and iodine. So most of these minerals are available from the plants, but these are available in higher amounts in meats. So these are the sources for different minerals in the foods. Now let's talk a little bit about the footprint. So we talked about the carbon footprint in our last ecosystem class, right? So let's talk about nutritional footprint. What do you think means nutritional footprint? Yeah, it is about how much you take in. So the thing is, for you to be able to take in that required amount of nutrient, how much land do we need to occupy? So basically, nutritional footprint would be the amount of land that you would need for you to be able to feed on the materials to survive. So here's an example. So here's an adult, and we said 2,000 to 3,000 kilocalorie of energy per day is the requirement, right? Now, carbohydrate is the major source of energy. Let's talk about the wheat field. Let's say that person is feeding on the wheat for the whole year to meet his requirements, then that person would need 0.15 hectares of wheat field. But, okay, let's give him the option. No, I don't like wheat. How about the corn? So between wheat and corn, corn produces more in terms of the yield. So if he goes onto the corn-based diet, then he would only need 0.06 hectare of cornfield. So see the difference in terms of the production and the amount of land that he would need, right? But why just do carbohydrates? Let's add some protein, right? Let's do some soybean. Now, if we add protein to the diet, it's going to take 1/4 portion of the grain that's produced. Since we saw that there was the difference in terms of the production in wheat and the corn, you see now the person will need 0.16 hectare of land if he chooses wheat and soybean-based diet, but he will only need 0.09 hectare of land if he goes to corn and soybean-based diet. But is this enough? Where is he getting his vitamins, minerals from? Do you think you'll be able to just survive on this for a whole year? No, right? Let's add some fun. Let's add some fruits and vegetables to his diet. Now, fruits and vegetables, the research says that the daily requirement should be 400 grams per day. And to meet this requirement, we would need 0.02 hectares of land to produce fruits and vegetables. Now let's add it together. So if you look here, so this is the wheat-based diet, right? So wheat beans, fruit and vegetables. This is corn-based diet. Corn, beans, fruits and vegetables. Now see the difference. Which one is taking more land compared to the other? Yeah, so the wheat-based diet is taking more. That means the nutritional footprint, if the man follows the wheat-based diet, is more compared to if he follows the corn-based diet, right? So basically, the nutritional footprint over here, you can see it's the amount of land required to provide an adult with the required vitamins, proteins, carbohydrates. And this is generally based on the US production scale. And we know United States has modernization in terms of agriculture, right? The ag modernization. Do you think all the countries would have the same setup for agriculture? No. So this is basically based on what US produces in terms of wheat and corn, right? No, not all the countries do the same. So I come from Nepal. We do not have as much ag modernization as here we have in US. So basically that would say that we don't have as much production as we would have here for the same amount of land. So basically that would give us an average that an average person to meet his requirement for a year would need 0.25 hectares of cropland. So in US, if you were following the wheat-based or the or the corn-based, it was 0.111 to 0.18, right? But that would be average in terms of the worldwide production. Now, do we have enough land to have 0.25 hectares of cropland for each person? Yes, for now. But can anybody recall what is the current population in the world? 8.2, correct? Yes. So now if we go on the same exponential population growth rate, this is not going to be enough. And with the increase in human population, the settlement is increasing, right? We want more land, we want buildings, industries, and everything. So that way we are shrinking the agricultural land itself, right? So we are not going to meet this demand here per person if the rate goes in the same fashion. Now, let's talk about some of the factors that affects this nutritional footprint. We talked about production, right? So what are a few things that goes into the production? What do you use to increase your production? Water, yes, yes, yes. Water, fertilizers, electricity, pesticides, weedicides, whatnot, right? Now, all these agricultural inputs that are going towards the production, they are going to increase that footprint. But on the other end, these are also helping to increase the production, right? So if you add fertilizers, that's going to increase the production of that specific area. So this will reduce the footprint. You're adding things. So let's say you have an acre of land, you produce, let's say, 5 tons of corn from that land. But if you add proper fertilizers, if you make 10 tons, that means you don't need you don't need 1 more acre to produce that amount, right? From the same land, you are growing more, double the production. So that on the other end will reduce the footprint. But the fertilizers, the pesticides, the weedicides we are adding, this also adds to the environmental pollution, right? We are polluting the soil, the air gets contaminated with the water is contaminated on the other side. So again, this now goes towards increasing that footprint. So we have to be very careful on what our goals are. Is it just increasing the production, or are we also taking environmental concerns into our consideration? So these are some of the factors that we need to keep in mind. Now, what can be the ways to reduce that footprint? All right, tell me randomly. Sorry? Yes, organic methods of producing, composting. What else? Sorry? Uh-huh. True. Yes. Yeah. What else? Correct. Cover cropping, yes. Have you heard about green manuring thing? Yes. Yeah. So all these are some of the ways that will go towards reducing our footprint because we can't stop growing food, right? Can we? No. We need food to survive, so we have to produce. But these are some of the ways that it can help to reduce the footprint that we have created by producing the crops for our own health, right? Now, let's talk about some of the other uses of plants. So we know we talk a lot about how we use plants for our nutrition, for our diet, right? What are some of the other uses of plants? Sorry? Okay, so forages and feed grains. So plants not only feed us, but it also feeds the animals, right? Correct. So in the forage, we have hay and silage. All right, without looking at the PowerPoint, can somebody tell me what is the difference between the hay and the silage? Correct? Yes. Yeah, that is correct. So hay is more of like the dried out material, but silage is more of the fermented one. Yes, that's correct. Now, in terms of the feed grains, now we also feed grains to the animals, right? Corn, soybean, wheat, rice, a lot of this stuff. In our culture, we have a lot of corn that we produced for us, but whatever was excess would go towards the animals too. Yeah. Now, these would also contribute towards the footprint, right? Because we're producing means we are doing something, we are managing the field accordingly. So how do you think can we reduce this footprint? We all know we need to grow these forests and feed grains to feed our animals, but how, like what would be the ways that we could reduce this footprint from our end? Now, do you think if we invest more on this, are we competing this against the land that we use to grow crops for us? Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. So these crops actually you can grow on some marginalized lands where there are like steep slopes, maybe the soil is not that great. We can select some of the forages that do well in these conditions and use that land instead of competing it with the crops that we use for us. So that is one of the ways that we could probably go towards reducing the footprint on producing these. True. So now that will also help towards building the soil. That's correct. Yeah. And in the forest too, we can add a lot of legumes that works towards um, getting more soil fertility, right? So those are some of the things that can be integrated. Now, the next thing that we use the plants is for fiber. How many of you have seen something like this that's in the picture? No? Anybody? Somebody in the back? What do you see the plants use in this picture? What is it used for? You see any plant materials in this picture that's been used? No? Yes. So this one, I am very familiar with this kind of building because I grew up in one of these in the village. So my grandparents, they had structure like this. So this is basically the straw that comes from the rice, wheat, right? So once you harvest the grains, you dry the material, and this can be used as the roof. So this, what it does, it saves the heat from leaving the houses and keeps the houses warm. So that is one of the ways that these can be used as the structural materials for the houses. Now, there are still some parts in my country who have this sort of houses who are using these plant materials. So straw, bamboos, they are used in terms of the structure building there. Now, when we talk about the fiber, 2.5% of the cropland is now occupied by the fiber crops. What do you think is the number one fiber crop in the world? Our United States. Cotton? Yeah, what do we use cotton for? Ooh, yeah. For clothes, textiles, everything, right? After the cotton, so let me ask you this. Do you know which is the biggest state that produces cotton in United States? Sorry? Mississippi? Now that I don't know the correct answer to that. I'm just asking you, right, in general, because so for my PhD, I was in Georgia, and Georgia had a lot of cotton fields. You would drive miles and miles and still see cotton fields on both ends. And I used to wonder, like, wow. And the cotton fields that I saw here, they are not as tall as I have seen in my country. Most of them are the dwarf varieties. And you'll see more of cottons than the plant itself. So Texas is the number one. All right, there you go. Okay, all right, there you go, Texas. So following the cotton is the jute that comes in terms of the fiber crops. But now what is taking the big market is, correct? Hemp is the one that has shown potential in many ways. Now, when I talk about the hemp, what's the other counterpart? Correct. Yeah, marijuana. So because it is same species as marijuana, there are legal concerns about growing hemp. But if we look into the hemp in particular, it is very different than marijuana. Physiologically, it also has very low THC content. I think in marijuana, it's above 5%, but in hemp, it's less than 0.3%. So it doesn't meet that category, right? So it has various advantages to grow, which is why a lot of consideration has been put into this to consider hemp as the fiber crop. Number one, what do you see in the picture for the hemp? They're tall, yes. They're very tall, they have long stems. If you see, they don't have a lot of branches like the trees do, right? So this is a long stem, few branches, the stems are sturdy, and that is a very good material to get the fibers out of. And when we talk about cotton versus the hemp, do you think cotton is renewable? No, but hemps are. And I mentioned about the green manuring thing earlier for the soil fertility, right? So hemp is one good material for in terms of the green manuring. The next thing that it does, it has a very high rate of carbon dioxide absorption. So if you compare it to lots of trees and the hemp actually does better job in terms of carbon dioxide absorption than most of the trees. So there you go. And the other thing is hemp requires less water. It doesn't require a lot of pesticides, fertilizers to grow. That means it can be adapted in marginal lands as well, right? So it requires less inputs, but gives more. So basically this has the smallest footprint in the plant category for the fibers. Now, medicine is other uses for the plants. And in modern medicine, 25% of these medicines are plant-based. Some of the examples are over there. So aspirin, it comes from the bark of the willow tree. How many of you know the willow tree? I had to Google it, sorry, but I had to Google to see what the willow tree was. So basically, I have seen willow tree. I just didn't know that it was willow tree before. So aspirin is something that comes from the bark of these willow trees. This is used in terms of pain relieving. Quinine, on the other end, it comes from bark of Cinchona tree. It is used to cure malaria. So malaria is one of the disease that is mostly prevalent in the Asian countries. I suffered from one when I was a kid, mosquito bites and everything, right? So there's the medicine that comes from the plant itself. Next, morphine, opium, heroin, all of these pain relieving extracts, they come from the plant called opium. Now there's this recent discovery that's going on in terms of the research is for the cancer treatment, which is Taxol that comes from the tree called yew. So this is something new for me too, but this is still on the ongoing research process. Now comes this interesting part, right? Marijuana. So a lot of these, as I talked about the heroin, opium too, so they have this addictive nature. So once you start it, you might be addicted to that, which is why we have all these rules and regulations, right? In the first place, because in a lot of in the world, even in the US states, marijuana, like growing marijuana is not legalized. But there are some aspects in terms of the medicinal marijuana where it has been used to have for the therapeutic benefits. I actually had a colleague back at University of Georgia whose daughter had seizure issues every now and then. So this was something that he was leaning on to because he knew this was helping his daughter. But again, this is not legal in the US federal levels. There are a lot of states now have legalized this just for the medicinal purposes, not for the recreational, for the medicinal purposes that medical marijuana has been legalized. Now, interesting. How many of you like coffee? I carry mine with me all the time. What else? So plants can be used for pleasure. Like it's just that stimuli thing that when you see it, you smell it, you taste it, it gives you a certain sense of pleasure, right? Same with the coffee, tea. There are some spices or herbs that give you that pleasure. One common thing is tobacco and alcohol too, right? So that has no nutritional benefit at all, but it's just used for the pleasure. But because of its health concerns, now tobacco growers are looking into other alternative crops, right? They're looking into other crops that can provide them with more benefits. Another thing is sugar. How many of you like sugar? We all have sweet tooth, right? I don't even can imagine the life without sugar. But did you know that we do not need sugar in our diet? But we are addicted to it so bad that that's one of the main item that we go and buy in the groceries, right? So that there you go for the pleasure. Now, other thing that we have is for the ornamental and recreational purposes. How many of you have plants, flowers in your houses or in the yard? What kind of plants do you have? Anybody else wants to share? Uh-huh. Yeah, roses are beautiful, but they have a lot of issues, right? Pests, diseases. Uh-huh. Yeah. What else? Okay. Snake plants. Okay. Yeah. So different kinds of plants. Why do you have that plants? They look pretty. For air filtration, good point. What else? See, we have some plants in here too, right? Does it make you feel good? They're pretty, right? So it's mostly for the ornamental purpose to beautify that area. So now if we look into the urban biomes, in the urban society, if we look into that, what we see the most is the buildings, right? Urban area, suburban area, we see a lot of buildings. And you'll also see some plants around, just few for the beautification purposes. Now, if I have to go and buy some plants from a store, or if you go to the store and want to buy some plants, what are the categories that you look into? The price? Uh-huh. Like, what are the other criteria that you want to buy certain plant and not the other? Uh-huh. Native, non-native, true. Pest resistant, yeah. So in my opinion, when I go to the store to buy certain plants, I just go around to see which one is the prettiest for me. That's my first category. And then I look into the prices later just to see if I can afford that to have that plant, right? So basically, if the major thing is if we like that plant, we bring it to our environment, right? But now the thing is that plant native or not native is where we come next. Because native plants means we are taking that from the same biome, right? But if it's non-native, then it can be invasive. So if it's invasive, it takes over a lot of area. Those are some of the crops that would need more inputs in terms of fertilizers, management, and stuff. So basically, that results into creating higher footprints, those ornamental plants too, because we need special input, care, everything for those plants, right? And all these fertilizers and pesticides that we've been using in these plants basically leads to the pollution aspect of it. Now, when we consider the ornamental production, so in United States, we have 300,000 hectares that goes into the ornamental production. That is equivalent to 0.15% of US crop area, just 0.15. Now we talked about the corn before, right? So if we look into the area that is occupied by the corn, the ornamental production, it only is equivalent to about 1% of that. But if we look into the value that the ornamental production gives, it is 50% of what corn gives. So see, less than or maybe about 1% of the crop area, but in terms of the value, it is equivalent to 50% of the corn. This depicts that ornamentals are the high value business, right? There's a lot of money. Yeah. And I recently had a chance to have this ornamental trip to North Carolina to see what the business is like, what are they doing in terms of the production, what's the business. You know what was number one selling criteria for North Carolina? So I visited Asheville. Where do you think all those flowers go into? The number one business. Weddings. So Asheville is known for the destination weddings, right? So a lot of those flowers go into the weddings. Now, in terms of Kentucky, that was not the case. So we had a few of our Kentucky flower growers too. So they were mostly subscription based. They were doing some farmers market, but the biggest problem they had was competing with Kroger, Walmart, Florista, right? So that was the competition. But Asheville, they were doing super nice because of these weddings. So see, that has that business, the floral business over there. Now, let's talk about some of the negatives in terms of ornamental production. It is very labor intensive. You have to be very careful because when you are taking your flowers out to sell, customers are going to be very picky, right? Do you go to your rose garden and then pick the nastiest rose? No, right? You want the one that has not a single damage or anything, right? So it is very labor intensive. It has, it requires a lot of inputs to produce it. But if we look into the positive aspects of this ornamental or recreational stuff, then this, because it is labor intensive, that means we require more people to work in the ornamental business, right? So it is actually providing jobs to a lot of local people there. Now, a lot of these ornamentals, if you see, those are produced in nurseries, greenhouses, right? So when we have this closed system, the fertilizers and the waters that goes into the production can be recycled and used again. So that is something that we can consider to lower the footprint that we are doing for the ornamental production here. Now, coming to the conclusion. So we all learned in this class that we grow plants for various purposes, right? Starting with number 1, food. Second, fiber for the animals, forage and feed crops, right? We also use it for ornamental purposes, also the medicinal purposes, so many different ranges of plants used, right? Now, what were the positive impacts? We all need food to survive, right? So yes, to sustain the human life and economics. Now, there are some of the plants who are working towards building that soil fertility and stuff. So they are working towards the environmental aspects of it too. And for the carbon sequestration, a lot of the trees, the hemp that we said, it sequesters a lot of carbon dioxide there. Now, coming to the negative impacts of it, you'll see it there, right? So we are simply overusing the resources, the land, the water, everything over there, which is leading towards the environmental degradation. But what is the solution? Can we stop eating? No. So basically, we can't stop growing the food, right? So we have to be careful about having a balanced and sustainable ways to producing the crop, because at the end of the day, we all need to survive. And we need to save the environment as well, right? Okay, so there we go. Any questions that you have from this chapter? No? All right, at this point, I also wanted to remind you all to sign up. I don't know, I think it's passing around, right? Oh, yeah. Who has the sign up sheet? Okay, yeah. Have you all signed up? Have you all put your names or signatures in it? All right. Besides that, I have been checking the Canvas. I know some of you have already submitted the syllabus quiz. Please do not forget to submit that. It's due on 29th of August. And it's a very simple test. You just have to acknowledge that you have read the syllabus. And some of you, so Lucian, have you had chance to register? Okay, because I didn't see your name as of yesterday. So if you had the chance, okay. Okay, so you all have been able to access the materials in the Canvas, right? Okay, yeah. Do not forget to do the syllabus quiz. It's worth 25 points, and I'm also taking the attendance. So do not forget to sign up the sheets, and if you could bring it to the front at the end. Alrighty, so this was all for today. If you don't have any questions, we'll meet in our next class on Thursday, and we'll have class as well as the lab for that day. Ready?